Today we're going to talk about recursive CTEs, or also known as recursive joins, that you'll use for hierarchies. Okay, so recursive CTEs can be a little bit complicated. I'm going to try to explain those to you today. We'll see how clear I can make it. Well, we'll start with just a regular CTE. So a CTE starts with the with statement, and then you give it an alias name. And we'll start here with just, I'll just say CTE table. And then you can list the columns if you need to. And then you say as, and then you have two parentheses, and then there'll be some SQL in here. And finally, what you have is you simply have a select statement where you select out of the CTE. Okay, and I could put anything in here. If I put select A, specify the column name, then it pulls this table out. So this is really like a subquery. So the syntax for the recursive CTE, and I'll just put some comments here, is you want to anchor, you want an anchor record, and then you're going to have union all, and then you're going to have your recursive statement. And the recursive statement will just keep running over and over and over. And so that's how the syntax will work. And now we got to figure out what to put into these two places that I commented here. So an anchor record, in this case, we're not going to actually use a table. I'm just going to go out and get a number. So we're just going to say select 0 as num. So that's going to be our anchor record. And what we want to do is we want to actually just count up. So this is a simple example of recursion only, just to understand the syntax of what we're trying to do. So next up we want to say select, and we want to actually call the CTE table. So we're going to say select star from CTE table. What's going to happen here is this is going to get called over and over and over and over again. And when that happens, it'll never stop, because the first time the CTE is called, it'll get this first anchor record, and then it'll go get this, and then when it goes gets this statement, it'll call itself again, it'll call itself again. That's recursion. Whenever you deal with recursion, you have to have a way of stopping the recursion. And so let's go ahead and finish this statement and make some sense here. What we're going to do is we're pulling from the CTE table, we're going to get num, but we're going to add on to it, and we're going to add 1 to it. And let's run this and just see what happens. It should be a lot of fun. Okay, so we got a statement here. The statement is terminated. The maximum recursion is 100. So it recursed 100 times and then died. We don't want that. What we want, well, let's go over to results. If you look at the results, we actually got recursion counting over and over and over again until we got to 100, and then it died from maximum recursion. In order to stop it from recursing, we have to have a where clause, and we can say where num is less than 10. So let's run this again. So now it recursed 10 times, and actually 10 plus 1. Let's walk through what that looks like in more detail, so you kind of know what's going on. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open up Excel. Okay, so this CTE table, the first time you come through, so this is iteration 1. The first time it comes through, what's it going to do? It will just get the anchor record. So it's going to do the select 0. Zoom that in here. It's going to select 0 as num. And so we're going to get 0 for our value. And this is how the CTE, recursive CTE, is actually defined. So only the first time does it get this thing in front of the union all. The next time it'll come through and grab this second part. So on iteration 2, it's going to grab select num. Let me go here and put this on one line. And I'm going to bring this over to Excel. Okay, so now what it's going to do is, it's the second time it comes into CTE, and it says, oh, run the second part, the part after union all. Now it's going to run the part after union all every time it recurses now, every iteration. So now we're looking here and it says select num plus 1 from CTE table. Well, the CTE table was this prior record. It had 0. So now it's going to say 0 plus 1. And it's going to say, is the number, which is 0, is it less than 10? Yes. So 0 plus 1 is 1. And from now on, it's going to keep running that. And the only difference is I need to update my iteration number. And so the next time it runs, it's going to run the second part, the part after the union all. It will no longer run the first part again. That's only the very first. It gives you the anchor record. Now it's running the bottom part every time. So it will keep running this over and over, but when it runs it on this third iteration, num is now the prior one, which is 1. So num is still less than 10, and we have 1 plus 1 equals 2. And then we're going to keep going. 2 plus 1 equals 3. And then we're going to have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Let's slow down now. So we have 9, and then we come down here. 9 is less than 10, so it will run again. And we have 9 plus 1 equals 10. Right? And then finally, we come down here, and 10 is not less than 10, so it stops. It doesn't run this last iteration. That's how this thing runs. Okay, very first time it runs this top part. Then it's going to run again, and it's going to run the part after the union all. So that's the two parts. But the part after the union all has to have a way to stop the iterations from running, so that it will not recurse anymore, or else you'll get that error that we got at the beginning. Okay. Now that we understand the recursive CTE, we need to actually use this for hierarchies. So I don't need my Excel, so I'm going to minimize that. We'll get our full screen again. And we want to go after employees. So let me start a new query. I'm going to put this one right there. And we're going to start a new one because we want to keep the kind of cheat code that we have here. All right, so the table we want to go after, let's take a look at it. We have the employee table. So this employee table has a list of employees. It has actually 14 employees. And it has the employee number, employee name, and who their manager is. That's really what we care about right now. And when you look at their manager, the manager is also in the table. So 7902 is Ford. He's in the table also. So this is going to be a self-join in order to get the full manager-employee relationship. Another thing to note is that King is the president, and they don't have a manager. So King is actually the top of the hierarchy. And then people report to King, and then people report to the next level, and so on and so forth. So we'll have a full hierarchy. And so I actually have an example of the hierarchy. Let me pull that up here. I'm just going to paste this over so you don't have to watch me type it. But basically we have King. King has an ID of 7839. Now, in order to walk down the hierarchy, you would look at well, what employees have a manager of 7839? And so we have Jones right here, which I put up here, and his ID is 7566. And then who else has a manager of 7839? Blake has one. and Blake's right here. 7698 is his employee number. And then there's one more person that has a manager of 7839, or a manager of King, and that is Clark, and his number is 7782, and here's Clark. And so King has 3 people reporting to him or her, and it's Jones, Blake, and Clark. Now Jones has an ID of 7566, so let's go back to Jones, 7566. Now who reports to Jones? So where is the manager 7566? And we have one down here, which is Ford. And then I might need to show a little more. Nope. Where's the other 7566? Here it is, Scott. And so both Scott and Ford, their manager is Jones, because the manager says 7566. And then we could walk down further. So what we want to do, though, is we want to write a query that starts with the very top, and then it recurses down, and it keeps walking down the hierarchy until there's no one else. And then we'll see everybody that reports, starting with the president. All right, so we're going to use this recursive CTE to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this, and we're going to start our query. Let's make a little bit more room. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is we want to basically pull over the CTE. That'll make it easy for us. So we'll start with that syntax. And in this CTE, I'm going to give it a different name. I'm going to say EMP for employee. So I have to select back out of employee. Now the first thing we need to do is we need this anchor record. So this is iteration 1. Who do we start with? Well, we're going to start with this King. So we're going to, first of all, I'm going to select star from employee. And then I'm going to say where employee, or actually I'm going to say where the manager is null. Now we could also go after employee number 7839, and that'll give us the same record. We're just looking for a way of filtering to just this record. And so let's go ahead and pull this in. And so now we have our anchor. And so that's the very first thing we're going to do. And if we remember from our Excel example, we have our anchor record, and then the second part after the union all is what's going to run every time after that. And so let's figure out how to work that. Well, before we do that, let's narrow down the columns. We don't need hire date, salary, commission, department number. We don't need those for what we're trying to accomplish here. We really only need employee number, employee name, and their manager. And that will help us, that'll be enough to demonstrate what we're trying to do here. So let me pull in employee number, employee name, and manager. Okay, so now I've only got those columns. All right, after we have our anchor record, the next thing we need to do is work our way. We need the recursive part of this. So on the example that we did earlier, we went and queried from the CTE table itself. All right, and we just added 1 to this number. So let's go ahead and pull from the CTE table. And the CTE table now is called EMP. And we're not going to need this where clause, but we're going to leave it there for a minute. So we have the CTE table. Now what do we want to do with the CTE table? We know right now the CTE table has this first anchor record. So we're on iteration 2 right now, and it has this one anchor record in it. And that is employee number 7839. Well, what we want to do is take this one record and go find all of the employees that have a manager of this 7839. In order to do that, let's join to the employee table. So I'll do an inner join, employee, and we'll give it an alias of E. And then we want to join on. So what do we want to join on here? Well, we know that the employee CTE right now is holding its first iteration of stuff. The first iteration of stuff is this one record, and it has 7839 in it, right? So we want the employee number out of this EMP table. And what do we want to match it on in the employee table? Well, we want to match it on the manager, right? And this will give you all the people that have a manager of 7839. Okay? And now, when we pull those people, we want to actually return those records as that iteration. And so I'm going to grab the columns up here, and I want to return the new records that we just got by joining over to the employee table. And in this case, we don't need something to stop the recursion. It'll actually stop when it doesn't hit this join and get any more records. So at some point, this join will be null, it won't have any records, and it won't be able to iterate anymore. So let's run this and see what comes back. Okay, so I'm going to expand this a little bit, and you can see we start with King and 7839, so that was our anchor record. Iteration 1 gives us these three records here, where their manager is 7839. Then iteration 2 happens, and I don't know the exact order that it would happen in because we got three records here. The iteration 2 is going to go out and take all three of these and join again, basically where the employee number matches the manager number. And it's going to say where the manager is either 7566, 7698, or 7782. And now you're seeing it here. Here's the 7782. Here's all the ones that report to 7698. And then finally, what was the other one? 7566 is right here. And so that's the iteration. So let's pull Excel back up. And let's do the same exercise one more time to make sure we understand what this is doing. So let me just open another sheet. Here, I'll grab this. Let's make that a little bigger. Okay, so iteration 1. We have this first query. And it gets our first record. Sorry, I'm going to put it on one line here. I'm going to copy it over. Okay, so iteration 1. We have that query. Shrink it down. And that's way long. Okay. And so that first iteration is going to return back this King record, right? Then, so we basically have a record with, for the 7839 employee. Next, it goes down into this bottom part, and this bottom part runs, and it's going to take that record of 7839, and it's going to return these three records here. So let's make some room here so we can kind of see what's going on here. So the first time we got that record. Now iteration 2 comes, and this is what's in the iteration. or in the CTE, and it joins up to the employee table, and it returns these 3 records. All right? Now iteration 3 takes these 3 records and joins back to the employee table again. We'll insert. And it's going to get all the records that have manager of any of these 3 things. Let me just show you what that looks like. So select star from employee, where manager in any of those 3 things. So now we're on iteration 3. Oops. And it's going to return basically these 8 people, because the managers in there are all from those managers that we just listed right here. Okay? And so this is what it's going to return. Let me go back to the CTE here and run it. And so iteration 2 was there. Iteration 3 is going to be down to here. And then iteration 4 will be right here. And so if I just took iteration 3, and let's grab those and drop them over into our Excel. Ooh, I just overran a lot of stuff. Let me get some more space. All right, so all those happened. And then finally, we're going to have our last iteration, then we're going to run out of things to iterate on. But we'll have iteration 4. Iterations 4 is going to take all these people, and it's going to basically insert them here, and it's going to, and that's what it's doing with the join, right? And so let me just go up here, and it's going to grab the last 2 records. And this is what comes out of iteration 4. And then it goes to iterate on number 5, and it has no more records to find and to return, and then it stops. So that's the mechanics of it. And sorry I took so much time. I wanted to make sure that it's clear in your head how this thing operates. It wasn't clear in my head. I had to look at it multiple times before I knew enough to actually explain it. So I've used it many times. I just always grab the syntax and just throw it in there and make it work for me. But this is how it works. It uses the anchor record first, and then iteration 2, it'll come down here. Iteration 3, so every iteration after that, it just uses the bottom part of the union. And then you end up with the results you're looking for. Now there's a couple of things that will help you to utilize this a little more. So I'm going to show you that here. The next thing that I would want to see on these is maybe what level are we on. And so you can do that by kind of combining that first one we have where we started with 0 and then we started counting up. We're going to use that same technique to just show the level that we're in inside of the hierarchy. And the way I'm going to do that, let me go ahead and start, and I'm going to put a new column in. I'm just going to start with 0. So basically the same thing we had over there. So I'm going to say 0, and I'm going to call this as level, LVL. And when we go down to the recursive part of this, I'm going to put in actually level plus 1, and we'll give an alias of level. And so now if I run this, let me shrink this up just a little bit. Now we have this level that each of these employees are in. And so we have the top being 0, and then we have the next level being 1. So if we don't like that, if we want the top to be 1, we just change this to a 1, rerun it, and we get the levels in there like that. So level 1 is the very top, and then we have Jones, Clark, Miller, or Jones, Blake, and Clark in level 2, and so on and so forth. Here's another thing that you might want to know. Maybe you don't want to start with King. What if we want to see all the people that report to Blake? So Blake has employee number of 7698. All we have to do is change our anchor record and say employee number equals, and then we'll give it Blake's 7698. And so when we run that, now we have all the employees that report to Blake. And so our anchor record was Blake, he's at level 1, and then the rest report to him. And so that's how you change the anchor. Now there's another tip here that I use quite often that allows you to see all of the employee numbers inside of one column. And so if you ever want to go after, instead of changing the anchor, you can actually go after everybody that reports to somebody in a different way. And let me show you how that works. The first thing I want to do here is I actually want to return a new column that has employee number, but I want to put commas around it. So I'm going to do a comma separated list. So let me put in a comma, and then I'm going to concatenate the employee number. Now the employee number is a number, so I need to cast that as a varchar. So I'm going to say employee number as varchar, and then I'm going to also add on another comma. And so let me show you what that looks like. And so it's going to start building up a comma list. Now we need to do that in the recursive part of the query also. So let me go ahead and grab that. And here we need to alias it. Now this isn't going to quite run yet. There's another trick to it. Well, first off, I didn't give it a name, and so we're going to call this employee concat, because we concatenated all the employees together. So let's do that. And so in this case, we didn't actually concatenate them together. It's just the number itself. So what's missing here? I need to take this number, which is the current employee, but I need to get this EMP, the parent, in there also. So I'm going to take EMP.employee number, and then we're going to add on the rest of this stuff. Now we run into another problem. And so there's a little bit of complexity here. What's going on is we have different sizes of strings. We need both of these strings to be the same. So I'm going to cast this whole thing, and I'm going to cast it as varchar 250. And I have to do the same thing down here. Cast this whole thing, which ends right here, as varchar 250. Okay, and I'm missing a parenthesis. And now let's run that. This imp.employee number, we'll cast it as varchar. And I think I might have everything casted. Okay. And so now what you're seeing is you're starting to build up a string of all of the people that are reporting to each other. I made a mistake. What did I do wrong here? I concatenated it on. Actually, I need to rip this whole thing out. Sorry. I need to rip this out. So I put in the employee number. I don't need to put in the employee number. When I go after the EMP, I want the concat that I've already did. So we've got this column here, imp and concat, and I need to take it and put it in there. So I don't need that. I need imp.concat. Now let's run it. And now we have put together the full strings If I expand this, you can see everyone in here. For each row, you have the full hierarchy of all the employee numbers. Now, where is this used at? So this is used, and where I've used it before is I had a reporting services report where the requirement was I want to go after any employee and I want to see the report of all the people that report to them. So in this case, if we wanted to see all the people that report to Blake, for instance, we could now go after this and say where the imp concat is like, and then we're just going to put a percent period, and then inside the percents we want to go after a comma, and then we want Blake's employee number 7698 comma delete. And if we do this, now we've got everybody that reports. We got Blake and we got everybody that reports to him. Let's do one more example of that, because we can see even farther down there's a level 4 in here. So I want to go after, I think it's Jones, I want to go after 7566, and so let's go do that. And we can see all the different levels that report to Jones. So we didn't have to, in this case, we don't have to change the anchor record in order to do this. Now we can just go after whatever employee number we want using this syntax, and we'll get all the people that report to that employee. So that's another trick, and I have one more here. So many times what you'll have is the different levels, they want those out in different columns. And so let's figure out how we do that. So I'm gonna get rid of this. And so what I'm saying here, I guess, is level 1, they want its own column called level 1. And King should always be in that one. Level 2 should be either Jones, Blake, or Clark, depending on where the employee lives in the hierarchy. And so what we want here is we're going to want 4 new columns because we have 4 levels. And so basically we're doing a pivot. And we're going to say null as imp underscore level underscore 1. And then we're going to do level 2, 3, and 4. And I want to do the same thing in the recursive part. And first of all, let's just see if that runs. Okay, so now we have 4 new columns. And what do we want to put in here? So when we're in the anchor record, we actually want the employee name in here. And so King went in. But now what happens when we go down to the recursive records? Well, we want King in there the whole way down. So how do we do that? Well, we can use the CTE has it, emp dot employee name. So let's try that. So we have the different, so in level 1 here we have King, and it works on level 1 and level 2, but then as we move down it doesn't work. So when we get to like level 3, we actually want to put in what we've already stored for level 1. When we get to level 2, we want to put in probably what we stored for imp level 1 already. And so that'll keep bringing it down through the recursion. In order to do that, we need to check the level. So let's go to case when level, let's say it equals 1. So the first time it equals 1, we want this column to have in that employee name. But then every time after that, so we'll put in our else statement, we want the emp dot level 1, the thing that was in there. Now that's going to carry all the way down. Let's see how that works. All right, now we've got King all the way down. Now we just have to repeat what we have here. So let's repeat that for level 2. And if it equals level 2, we want to actually put the employee name in, else we want to use what's already there on level 2. Call this imp level 2. Let's run that. What happened here? Conversion failed when converting the varchar value Clark to data type int. So what's happening here is that when we set our anchor record up on the top here, it's assuming that my null is an integer. Then when I come down here and try to insert a string, it goes, whoa, you can't have a string in that column. I already made it an integer. So what we need to do is take this and cast it and tell SQL Server what this value should be. It should be a varchar. And a lot of times you'll want to give it a size, so we could call it 50. And so we need to do that to make sure that the anchor record doesn't incorrectly make that an integer. So let's run that again. And now it worked. And so Clark, as soon as we get down here, we've got on level 3, we use a level 2. Now, I think Jones should go ahead and, Jones, Blake, and Clark should go ahead and have a non-null value here because we've hit their level. So what can we do to change this? Let me shrink it up a little bit, and I'm going to shrink that way up so we got room here. Let me take this down. So what do we need to do different? So we're saying when it's level 2 to go ahead and put in the employee name. So this level is basically, I missed putting this in here, but it's imp.level. And so this is coming from the prior record. So when we're here on these, the actual CTE that came in is saying that we're on level 1. And so we should probably change this to level 1. Let's try that. Now that went off and messed us up again. All right, that wasn't the right solution. Let's see what we got here. So it's saying that, we need to change this to level 1, but instead of pulling the employee name from the CTE, let's pull it from the employee. There we go. Now we've got level 2 filled out. And now we can fix this going the rest of the way through. So let's copy this one and we'll put it in level 3. And all we need to do is up these integers each. Let's check out level 3. Okay, and then let's do the same thing with level 4. And here's level 4. That's the Recursive CTE. If you liked the video, please leave a like or a comment and subscribe to my channel. Or you can visit me at SQLtrainingonline.com.